Yeah. What's up, everyone? It's episode 305, everyone's favorite wrestling podcast, TF and Marks, and I am the brainless one. And I am just waiting for Cousin Jay to pop in at any moment, and we can get started. But we have quite a few things that we're going to get into today. It appears that FTR's future is going to be determined very soon in their match that they have upcoming against the Gun Club. We're going to talk about that. We have a new member of the WWE Hall of Fame. We're going to discuss that as well. Honestly, I really want to talk about what's going on. What's up, Mike? I really just kind of want to talk about what's going on with like the fans and continuously harassing the wrestlers. And I really, really want to talk about that because that just seems like to be an issue, and it's bad, because I'll get into that when Jay pops in. But what's up, Chris Brown? Alexa Bliss apparently had it was not an issue with booking that she was off TV. We're going to talk about that a little bit. There's an injured wrestler who is going to be rumored at WrestleMania in Los Angeles, at least over the weekend. I think it's ridiculous that these grown-ass men are going to hotels and airports and harassing the actual wrestlers as they're just trying to do and travel through and do all the stuff that they just want to do when they're not inside the ring, where they don't want to get bothered. Honestly, the video that I've seen with Liv Morgan where the dude's just all kind of like ganged up on her. The one dude had, I think it was like 5 different things in his hands, and he was holding them there. And, and the poor girl's just, autographing all that stuff. I mean, there's dudes who are like looking back at the person recording them, and it's like, Get a job. Like, you really are going to bother these people at 5 o'clock in the morning so you can shove? Like CM Punk said in his promo that he cut. What's up, Timmy? That he cut back in 2011, the summer of Punk. He goes, you guys will buy those programs even though my face isn't on it, but you'll shove that program in my face and expect me to sign it at 4:30 in the morning while we're in an airport. It's ridiculous. The dude reminded him about Prince Puma. Yeah, honestly, there was a lot of hype behind that too with what was it? El Vikingo del whatever El Hijo del Vikingo or whatever the hell it was. Yeah, I mean that was something. I will get into that when Jay's in here. But Rhea Ripley came out and said that she's kind of had enough about this, and now it seems like WWE is going to finally put their foot down with this stuff. It's really crazy to think that this is the stuff that's going on because people just don't understand boundaries. I get it. I still remember, and one of the things I've seen people say, Ooh, hold on. Let me see this. Honestly, Mike Rainey, real quick on Bray Wyatt, it appears that the match is still on. He's dealing with some kind of an illness, but as of right now, this is from a source inside WWE, that he's going to be still at WrestleMania. And honestly, that's what I'm expecting. I don't know what to expect. Like, is he really going to be there? I mean, it's a week. If he's sick, we got to figure out. I mean, is he sick? Is he hurt? Is it creative differences? I have a theory about something else that has kind of coincided with all of this that kind of goes hand in hand. But I don't know. I'm as far as I'm concerned, he's having this match until we're told otherwise, until he doesn't show up, I guess. And
Season correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
What's up, cousin Jay?
Hey, you know, lots of stuff. Originally, earlier in this week, I'm like, on what are we going to talk about? And now the list went from having a few things to about 20. So, but I'm psyched about it. I'm psyched that there are things that I need to speak out about. Yeah. So if you saw the promo for this week's uh, podcast, we will definitely get into those two topics.
And the funny thing is, you posted about Triple H's worst booking decision, and honest to goodness, I couldn't tell you what it is because there's been multiple booking decisions that he's made that I question.
You know, as much as there have been a lot of things you could question, but for the most part, I'm going to say that Triple H with his booking, I'm going to say like for me like 85-90% of the time, whether it's I love what they've been doing in the past several months with the secondary titles and the secondary champions. You don't have them losing all the time, so you're actually building up future stars there.
Right.
I like for the most part what they're doing with the tag team division. They're at least trying to do something with that. But there are some things definitely kind of at the top of the card where it's like, what in the Sam hell?
Right. And the other thing was what's going on with the fans harassing the wrestlers at the airport. That's what I was actually talking about as you were popping in. So I'd like to get your thoughts on everything that's going on with that.
It wasn't too long ago where Rey Mysterio was getting like accosted. I think it was in an airport. But between that, what happened with Rhea Ripley, what's been happening with Liv Morgan, what you have is a bunch of people out there who feel entitled to the time of the performers, entitled to get an autograph, and if the performer says no, like then they try to make a big deal out of the performer saying no and saying that they were a bad person, they should do this, this, and this. You know what? You don't deserve a ton of their time. There was a time a few years back in Austin Aries is one of those dudes where, for the most part, I'm like, he just comes off as a douchey prick. But he talked specifically about this in the fans' interaction and them feeling like entitled to his time or what have you. He's like, I'd be out at restaurants and people would just come up to me and not have any manners and expect me to, either be away from the person,
Jessica,
that I'm out with, or like they want me to stop what I'm doing to engage them. And right. There's a time and place, and his stance, which I think would maybe a little extreme, was like, unless I'm more or less at an autograph signing, go screw yourself.
Right.
But in general with WWE, Vince has wanted the performers, and I'm sure even in Triple H right now, the performers to engage the fans, but there's going over the line. Like when somebody says no, because either they're trying to rush to get to their plane, or they're trying to get to in Rhea's case, she was talking about trying to get to an Uber, and somebody followed her outside, and she had to like go somewhere else to like more or less try to hide, I think, from this person. And it's just bull crap. I know they're public figures, but people need to realize that these are people. They have moods. You do not deserve all their time, and it's absolute, up to their discretion whether or not they do it. And I understand why Rhea is now like, unless it's a personal photo of you and I, or you just have bought, an 8 by 10, which I'm carrying with me, where at least she'll get money from it, I'm going to say no. And personally, for me, when I was younger, maybe I was a little bit more into autographs. Right now, I'm more about, like, if I meet somebody like that, I want to have an interaction with them. Because I'd rather have a memory than like, oh yeah, I got this thing signed by them. I've never, really huge been into that, but it sucks that, all right, this is their line of business, but you got people hounding you and they won't give you a moment's peace.
Right. And honestly, to add on to that, for me, I can count on one hand the amount of autographs I have. I have the Undertaker and Paul Bearers that I got when I was 11. And I stood in line for 2.5 hours at Stephen World of Wheel to get his autograph. The other
That's
one
the
I have it.
specific signing that they're having.
Right. So there's that. I have Mr. Bob Backlund's autograph. He just happened to be at my sister's bank, and my sister told him I was a huge wrestling fan, so that's how I got Bob Backlund's autograph.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Rob Van Dam that I got probably about a decade ago, where I paid $50 up in Webster, Mass, to watch Bobby Lashley lose to a local competitor for big time wrestling, and not realizing at the time the importance that was the first time I would witness the greatness that became F and Mark's Hall of Famer Sean O. But again, I paid for, those were the cases. I didn't go up and harass these people. Hell, at that same show I went and got RVD's autograph at, I thought Hacksaw Jim Duggan was the freaking janitor. And that was and that was one thing that when I was looking at people like arguing with Rhea Ripley, and it's like, well, just dress up differently, be incognito. And I'm thinking to myself, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, that was the first thought I had, was I thought Hacksaw Jim Duggan was the garbage man because he was dressed like a bum with his hair in a freaking in a ponytail. It was Hacksaw Jim. Oh, really? My bad. But like it was when I saw that, I was like, that's so stupid. Why would you tell him something like that? It's not right that these fans are doing this. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like I've got a handful of autographs. Like I've got Sheiky Baby back there. I paid for that. He actually did have an autograph appearance down the street from where I worked when I was in Providence. I'm like going, you know what? I love the Iron Sheik. I'm going to pay for his autograph. I have a picture with him somewhere. But as far as going out of my way to hound somebody for stuff, yeah, no thanks. I actually, for myself specifically, just feel like I'm infringing on their time, and even if they're a public person, they understand that, and with the industry I'm in, with television, it's like I deal with a lot of people who are seen on TV every day, and in, our local area, people will know them, and I've been out with them when they've been at these, randomly at the grocery store, or times where, like, we're in the middle of like a promo shoot and everybody is always trying to say hello to them, and it's like, so I've seen things like that up close, but definitely on a less crazy level, and I can understand where it's stressful, and I can understand where it's a lot, and understand why the performers are like, finally, like, this is a line in the sand, do not cross it, and oh, by the way, I'm going to, come up with ways where I can still interact with the fans, but not, I just need to put up my boundary to tell you that, like, okay, you want my autograph? Okay, buy this 8x10. I'll take a picture with you, but don't try to have me sign, my action figure. Don't try to have me sign X, Y, and Z. and make money.
And right, I agree. And I apologize because I look back and I'm actually staring at another autograph that I have, and that's one GOAT, Bubba Ray Dudley's. And I have to recognize, and I apologize, but
Yeah.
that was another one that the wife got me, and she purchased that one. So
again, there's a difference between purchasing and then harassing somebody. Purchasing, I mean, that's just they'll gladly accept that. That's part of their job.
Right.
I have a CM Punk and an Edge autograph, and that's because when CM Punk was in WWE and Edge, several years ago, when they show up in certain areas, they'll sit there and have to sign like 200 things, 300 things. This TV station I worked for was an affiliate for UPN when SmackDown was on UPN, so they gave us a whole bunch of stuff, and that's how I got them.
Right.
So, but the fans just need to chill the F out.
I agree.
So, but dovetailing off the Rhea stuff, and this is the thing that I'm going to say is Triple H's worst booking decision.
Can I take a guess?
Go ahead.
Is it letting Bill Goldberg out of his contract?
No. So, 8 nights from now, we will have night 1 of WrestleMania. 8 nights from now, our main event is going to be Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley. Both very talented performers. I have zero doubt that they are going to have a banger of a match. Zero doubt.
Banger after banger after banger.
But Rhea cut a promo on Monday. Rhea was one of the hottest female performers going into Elimination Chamber. The crowd was eating up everything she said. There was little to no reaction to her on Monday. Want to know why?
Wow.
Charlotte Flair is not a face. She should never, ever be a face. You shouldn't try to confuse the audience ever by trying to make her a face. Remember when they tried to make her a face in 2018 at SummerSlam by having Becky Lynch beat her up after the match?
Yeah, and then we got the man out of it.
The audience doesn't like her. She does such a good job at it, and you hear some things behind the scenes, and it feels like that, it's not too much of a character. They don't like her. I realized that Ronda Rousey, said, hey, I need the month of January off, and that made them kind of switch plans. They could have done something different. We did get Rhea versus Charlotte a few years ago at WrestleMania in front of one fan, but the attempt to Charlotte a face before fell flat on its face. You ended up making Becky the biggest female face out there when you were trying to make her the biggest heel. And Charlotte trying to win over the audience while she's like kind of sort of still being heelish towards her opponent, and then trying to talk well about the
What'd I do?
But basically trying to make her be heelish towards her opponent, but be kind to the crowd. Then you muddy it up even more, where Rhea is clearly, just a heel.
Mm-hmm.
She's in with the Spooky Pals, and you can't sit there pals and make all the Spooky Pals faces right now, right? It wouldn't make any sense, right?
No, not at all.
You it up even worse on Monday, where you have Rhea Ripley in the ring being a heel, cutting a heel promo, and talking about how she wants to make Charlotte Flair scared of her. Doesn't care if she respects her. She just wants her to be in fair. And then you bring out Bayley. Bayley is also a heel. Like, it makes zero sense to me what they're doing. As much as I appreciated that Rhea, you know, smacked the crap out of Bayley, and it was fun to see that and everything. But, like, from a booking perspective, you got a heel on a heel on a heel. And because of that, the audience is like going, wait, who do we cheer for? Like I said, I have no doubt Charlotte and Rhea are going to have a great match. But as far as the build-up goes, and as far as the booking goes, like, you have that as your main event, and the crowd is going to be tapped out before that match starts, and they're not going to care about that match until 15 minutes into it.
Yep. Especially if the rumors are
going to be happy about Sami Zayn and what happens to him. They better put that match early on in the night, or earlier on in the night. It can't be the match on right before that, because otherwise Charlotte and Rhea are going to die the same death that Orton and Triple H died, or the same death that Chris Jericho and Triple H died.
My favorite part is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Triple H should not be in the main event when he shouldn't be in the main event.
Right.
And it's funny, too, because if you remember, the WrestleMania 30 was another case. Because the fans were so out of it that it took them till halfway through the main event after The Undertaker lost it. But,
right.
Oh, my God, I said Batista. Brock Lesnar.
Brock!
And, like, the fans were great, you know, when they celebrated, but, like, come on. If the rumors matches for night one include Logan Paul and Seth Rollins starting the show, and then you're going to have the Hell in a Cell and the triple threat for the Intercontinental Championship. And if you add Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going up against the Usos, what's going to be on night two? Oh, the best part is Brock Lesnar's probably going to have 5 Omos before it too. It is, I am sorry, of all the matches that it could be, that is the match I am looking least forward to, and it has nothing to do with Rhea Ripley.
But the thing is, booking-wise, like, to me, it makes the least sense. Why did you sit there and try to make Charlotte Flair a face? They could have done this differently. They could have had Rhea go against Bianca.
Yep.
Then you wouldn't have that issue. You could have found a different face to go against Charlotte at WrestleMania. But I mean, again, some of this has to do with Ronda deciding she wanted to have a month off. But
it also, unfortunately, Jay, it also speaks volumes of the depth in the women's division of SmackDown. Because you have, at the end of the day, Rhea Ripley's the Raw star that's fighting for the SmackDown Championship, and you have 2 Raw stars fighting for the Raw Championship. So
right.
if they do have Rhea, she's going to move to SmackDown. The problem is that after Charlotte Flair, who are your other faces? And I hate the fact that I have to say after Charlotte Flair, who are your other faces? Because she, like you said, she's not a face. She should never be a face. But
never.
It's like it's Liv Morgan. Yes, I like Liv Morgan. She's a top face of the crowd. You didn't want to pull the trigger with Raquel Rodriguez, obviously. Natty Neidhart should not be fighting for either singles championship at WrestleMania. I am sorry. No disrespect to Natty Neidhart. And there was really nothing else she could do because I don't even know who else are the other faces. Tegan Nox just came back. Shotzi Blackheart, has she done anything relevant? That's the problem, is that they don't have anybody that they can step up and be a face on SmackDown. I mean,
specifically for this, because they like to bring in legends, they could have ended up using, whether it was Lita or whether it ended up being Trish Stratus, you could have brought them back to be the face for that.
Yeah.
They could have done something one-off. If you wanted, like, you could have had Lita in the Elimination Chamber win the match and have a title shot. So
Natty is the female Ziggler.
If they wanted to, I mean, you know me, I love me some Asuka. They could have kept her as a face. I love the new gimmick that she's got, though. They could have kept her as a face and had her be something, but, I mean, she's on Raw, so that is what it is. But I just think the whole dichotomy of this thing with Rhea and Charlotte and the fact that they involve Bayley in it, I'm like, I mean, watching on Monday, like, I was like, people should be crescendoing into, like, going, yes, I cannot wait to see this. They had the pull-apart brawl between Charlotte and Rhea last weekend or on SmackDown, and then you had the promo on Monday where, like, there was literally, like, no reaction. And that's because it's so murky, and Charlotte just is not a face. Should never
I agree.
be.
I agree.
So
I'm right there with you. I'm sorry. I am. I'm right there with you.
But that is why I think it's the worst booking decision. It's like, didn't you learn anything from SummerSlam a few years ago? Didn't you get the pulse of the audience? And usually, I think, for the most part, Hunter has felt it and understood it. And, I think if things were a little different, I think we might have seen Sami Zayn as the champion. Because I know Triple H understood what was going on with the crowd. But plans were in place. I have no problem with them sticking to a plan if you're like going, you know what? It's a good problem to have when you have two baby faces that are really over.
Yep. I.e., when Hulk Hogan in the Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, back at WrestleMania 6. And honestly, my biggest concern was, and it's not a knock on Cody. It's just that Sami Zayn got white hot when he did, was how was this going to transition when it was all said and done with Sami into Cody Rhodes. And my God, it has been
he and Roman must watch. They're must see TV. They really are. Every promo has been on point.
Cody Rhodes is now when I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. At the end of night 2, Cody Rhodes is going to be the man that he thought he was, that WWE didn't see in him in 2016, as he will be holding up both championships at the end of night 2. I'm convinced of this. He is signed, sealed, and delivered. The fact that they're saying that they still haven't decided yet, I find that bullshit. But that is just unbelievable. It's another master performance.
Yeah.
You didn't like the Stardust gimmick, so you left. And then you went and started your own promotion, and you couldn't get over there, so you left there too. Oh.
I mean, it's great stuff. It's cutting in, like, I mean, he's wrong in saying that Cody wasn't over in his own promotion. He was, but he decided he wanted different things because the crowd reacted to him loudly all the time, whether it was booing him or cheering him. But if he decided that, he wanted to go heel and go renege on his promise to never go for the championship after it was MJF who screwed him, right?
Yep.
So
he didn't want to give it. Look at him. He's Homelander.
He is Homelander.
He's absolutely Homelander if Homelander's dad was Dusty Rhodes.
Baby.
I still can't get over the meme.
Not that I want to spoil next week's prediction show for WrestleMania, but I think Tim's right. I think Cody wins, and then I think he gets RKO'd pretty quickly after, and or the night after on Raw.
It's one of those 2 nights. Yes, I agree. I It's a shame that they're not going to have the gambling.
His run as champion with somebody that everybody in the world like wants to see back. And I do love, like, Randy Orton is Randy Orton, but when he goes full heel, like when he did the screwdriver bit with Jeff Hardy those years ago, when he punted the McMahon family 20 billion times before WrestleMania, that's the best Randy Orton. And seeing him give an RKO to Cody immediately after he fulfills his dream, I think would be better booking, as much as like, hey, give him his moment, let him do his thing. I would rather see the moment where, like, you get the adulation, but then you're like, everybody would pop for the RKO and then boo him because he ruined the moment.
I can see a situation where it's like the Raw after and his music hits and Cody's in there and they're celebrating Cody's victory because of, all the history that Orton and Cody have. And then, like, as they're, like, he's holding up his hand, here comes the RKO, boom, 1. Looks at him, boom, hits him a second 1. And then he brings back the punt of the skull. If you really want to get him over, you've been saying it. They'll never retire the RKO. I'm sorry. I would cry. I would cry if they retired the RKO. But if they inserted the punt kick, it's going to write itself until SummerSlam.
It can.
I'm on board with that. I knew that wasn't worth the booking decision was bad. Oh.
A couple minutes ago, you did bring up the name Liv Morgan. I just wanted to mention this. There's an MMA fighter named Denzel Freeman, and he was doing an interview and said he wants to have a date with Liv Morgan. And it just made me think to myself, you know what? I think he has a better shot than that dude who was at the Knicks game next to
her. But you better believe he's going to have a hard time getting a date with Liv Morgan. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Because I don't know, he might be an MMA fighter, but I don't know how he's going to fare against Uncle Howdy.
Speaking of Uncle Howdy, I don't know if it was in chat box or where I saw it, but they were talking about Bray possibly dealing with long COVID, and that could be the thing that is keeping him out of WrestleMania, and the fact that why they've kind of closed ranks and not spoken about this. And Bobby Lashley possibly looking for an opponent for WrestleMania. So
I didn't even know it was long COVID, but if that's the case, that's an actual legit thing. I can confirm that. I don't remember which one of my many bouts with COVID. I think I'm Michael Jordan. I don't remember. I think I'm Jordan. 6. I know I passed Booker T and went to Jordan. I don't even know if it's 6 or 7 anymore. I've had it so much. But the long-term effects is a legitimate thing. I felt that in my lungs for months afterwards. So I get that. And in wrestling, is 1 3-minute match at the Royal Rumble. It's all about stamina to last in a wrestling match. So I get that. Yeah? Oh, here's a thought that we didn't think of. Because we've been trying to figure out, because last week you said that you would love to see Drew replace, Bray Wyatt.
Not happening.
And I want to get into that too, because that actually last week got some consideration. That's another one that crossed my mind about shitty booking decisions. I definitely want to get into that. But so let's say Let's say Bray Wyatt's not there. And then, Bobby Lashley goes out there and he demands a match. Let's like he starts off WrestleMania night 2. Bobby Lashley goes out there, demands an opponent. Bray Wyatt's got COVID. He ain't going to be here. I'll fight anybody. And of all the people whose music hits, what if it's LA Knight?
LA Knight deserves to be on WrestleMania.
Agreed.
I would just say, please don't let it be a squash match.
Agreed.
I want it to be like a competitive thing, and LA Knight comes out, cuts a promo, and like does his thing.
Yeah.
And has a banger of a match. I mean, he had a really good match with Cody where he got a lot of offense in not that long ago. Let's keep building this dude up. If their plan is to possibly have a push for him post-WrestleMania, this could be the start of it.
Honestly, he was the one name that popped up because he is the one name that is the greatest omission from WrestleMania right now. And
it's like Mike Rainey's idea there.
Honestly, I have this thing. It says stars enabled, and for some reason, I can't even read any of the comments. It's just I could see like the bottom half.
Right. So Mike Rainey's saying if Braun Breaker loses the NXT Championship, what if he goes against Lashley at WrestleMania?
Oh God, and they had a good match.
Chris Brown saying Chris Masters, the Master Lock versus the Hurt Lock.
Bobby Lashley was the first wrestler in WWE to break the Master Lock.
He was.
How the fuck do I remember that? Oh,
but
they don't call us Mark for nothing.
If they're doing an open challenge, Lashley deserves a match. I think LA Knight deserves a match. To me, it would be the one I would like to see the most. There are other performers where, like, I would not be upset seeing Braun Breaker versus Bobby Lashley, where let's say they book it similar to like Kurt Angle versus John Cena, on John Cena's first night, where it's like, okay, Lashley wins, but the young buck, so to speak, sorry to use that term, ends up really like pushing, the veteran.
I wouldn't mind seeing that either. Because what are your other options for Bobby Lashley? I mean, if it's not Bray Wyatt, first of all, it really should never have been Bray Wyatt. It was stupid to put him in this match, and I felt bad for Bobby Lashley ever since Brock Lesnar kicked him in the ding dong. So, but who's left? Who are you going to put in there? I mean, LA Knight, Elias, they already did that match. Elias already beat Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know where else you could go for Bobby Lashley. I think that Braun Breaker or LA Knight make the most sense. They could bring back Goldberg.
I mean, he and Lashley had issues, and they had some bad match. Well, they had a bad match and allegedly had a better match at the Saudi show.
Yeah, I just
Rick is officially a free agent, and that's one thing that came out this week.
Sad.
But Tony Khan said a very nothing statement about it. Allegedly, there are other places that are interested in signing Goldberg at this point. I mean, he's a name, and if you book him correctly, he could bring eyeballs to whatever show he goes to. but at this point, I don't think he's a ginormous needle mover. But if you want to have him for a special attraction here and there, I think he still works. You just need the right dance partner for him. I always go back to WrestleMania 33, where they booked the match perfectly between him and Brock. You have a match like that, he works fine in that. Don't have him do a 2-minute match. Don't have him do a show in Saudi Arabia when it's 110 degrees outside and he headbutts, the wall in the locker room and gives him a concussion before the match, and then he reconcusses himself during the match. That's a bad idea. Make sure he's more in temperate climates.
All I want to do is I want AEW to be in the Georgia Dome or somewhere in Georgia for their next show. I don't think they could sell out the Georgia Dome. Let's be serious. It's AEW. Not for a random Dynamite. And I just want QT Marshall with a stupid fucking QTV standing in the ring saying, something like, I'll fight anybody, and then Goldberg's music hits. That's all I want. If Goldberg wrestles one match, it's against, I want it against QT Marshall. Just so he could bury QT Marshall.
Okay.
I
that. Chris Brown has an idea of Jewish wrestler on Jewish wrestler.
Oh, him and MJF?
In MJF.
No. It's better, honestly, it's better than one suggestion that a fan made that even I cringed. That's how bad it was.
Wait. Was it Goldberg versus Ryback?
No. It was Goldberg versus Dax Harwood in not even an AEW, and Bret Hart is sitting at ringside when Dax Harwood kicks Goldberg in the head. So Dax Harwood could stand in the middle of the ring and said, "I did it for Bret Hart.
I did it for The Rock."
I mean, to really flabbergast the brainless one, that's impressive.
Speaking of Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, they have said that they have made a decision on their future. They have not announced said decision, and this Wednesday on Dynamite, they are in a match for the Tag Team Championships, where if they lose the match, they will leave AEW. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't know what to think. I really don't know what to think.
My initial thought is the Ass Boys have not had the title for a long time. It would be really stupid to take it off them so quickly, but Tony Khan and his booking of the TNT Championship tells me that, it's a possibility that it could be a hot potato. In my heart of hearts, I think the FTR boys have a lot of respect for Triple H. They worked for Triple H for a long time, and I think they probably have received enough assurances about what would happen to them if they possibly came to WWE, and I think we're going to see them in WWE and possibly the night after WrestleMania. So I'm going to say that the Ass Boys win this match in some way, shape, or form, and we get FTR reviving themselves in WWE.
They go hard.
See what I did?
They go hard all day and night. Honestly, Jay, it's one of those situations like when it comes to when I pick stuff. My head, my heart, and my gut tell me three completely different things. My head is telling me I don't know what to expect because I don't really want to get my expectations up because it could go either way. That's what I think. My heart is telling me they're going back to WWE. But my gut is telling me that Tony Khan has no idea what the fuck he's doing, so he's obviously going to take the tag team titles off of the Ass Boys. This is the same man who, when he announced last Friday that it was going to be El Minnesota Vikingo versus Kenny Omega.
El Hijo del Vikingo del
El Hijo
Famo.
El Hijo del Vikingo. I mean, all kidding aside, yes, it's all. I had to make a joke about the Minnesota Viking thing. That dude can move. All right, I'm not saying I've seen a lot of clips of this.
By the way,
was it awesome?
The one between Kenny Omega and Del Vikingo, the bump that he like when he did that two and a half somersaults and landed on the back of his head, I'm like, that dude's a freaking maniac. Crazier than a dude taking like 20 Canadian destroyers from a blow-up doll.
Really quickly, I've seen some clips this dude has done in the ring, and I'm like mystified. This dude's a fucking magician. And number two, I know that I sit here and I trash Omega and Kota Ibushi for wrestling a fuck doll, but in actuality, if El Hijo del Vikingo of Minnesota were to wrestle a blow-up doll, I would actually pay to see that.
Would you pay to see Ric Flair back in the 80s and mid-90s, and probably even to the mid-2000s, go against a broom?
No. Because there would be a point in the match where you know it was fake because the broom would be standing there and it and Flair would just fall at the same time.
Well, I mean, that would happen, and I'm pretty sure at some point the broom would bust Flair open.
The broom would bust open. Oh, speaking of Ric Flair, Jeff Jarrett came out and was critical of wrestling fans when he said that wrestling fans, quote, had unrealistic expectations in regards to Ric Flair's last match. Jay, what were your expectations of Ric Flair's last match?
I thought he was going to die.
It's funny.
He didn't know, the bar was like here. Actually, the bar was probably subterranean. But, I mean, he survived the match. So if we say survived the match was like, you know, good, like if surviving the match meant it was good, it was good. But if you're saying surviving the match was a low bar to hit, and let's say that maybe that was like 5% of what you were hoping,
right?
We got a good solid 6% out of that.
It's crazy because I thought of that, and before the podcast, I was tossing between whether I was going to do a top 10 Goldberg dream matches outside of WWE, or if I was going to come up with a top 10, a list of top 10 for the expectations of Ric Flair's last match. What were my expectations of Ric Flair's last match? Well, I can tell you right now. Number 10, I knew it was going to be a flop. I wanted to make sure I didn't put plop. Flop. That was my 10th expectations. Yep, the match was a flop. Number 9, Jay Lethal, Double J, and Andrade were going to be carrying the entire match. Yep, that was my expectations. And, yep, my expectations were met. Number 8, it was not worth the money.
Expectations met.
And I love the fact that it was a man who has made all of $30 in his entire wrestling career was talking about the fans' expectations were not, realistic. But I wouldn't have paid whatever the hell it was, and I think whatever it was overpriced, even if it was $1. Which is funny because number 7, I wouldn't watch it if it was free. I can go on YouTube right now. I watched Kenny Omega in the blow-up doll. I cannot, for the life of me, watch Ric Flair in that match. So, yes, again, expectations were met. Number 6, do nothing for anyone involved. Yep, that one was met. Yep. Number 5.
Yeah, absolutely was.
Number 5, Rick was going to look like shit.
Expectations met.
Number 4, almost as embarrassing to wrestling as when Kenny Omega wrestled the blow-up doll. Absolutely, they were met. Number 3, Rick.
All right, I mean, it sounds like this might be a 5-star classic as far as meeting expectations.
You forgot the decimal point in front of the 5, but Number 3, Ric Flair should never have done it.
Expectations not met. Not met there. He did do it.
No, he shouldn't have, though. He did do it, but he shouldn't have done it. So my expectations was that he did it and shouldn't have done it. I probably worded that like a brainless buffoon, but it's fine. Yeah? Number 2, Ric Flair's pacemaker was going to unplug.
Expectation not met.
And number 1,
fake heart attack. I know he had the fake heart attack, but I really wanted to see like a moment where it came out and then he had to plug it back in middle of the match. I mean, that's what he said he was going to do. It didn't happen.
And you've already said my number 1 expectation for that match, so. And the expectations were not met.
Woo! Tim wants us to tag, so when I post this, he wants me to tag Ric Flair so he can bury you. Woo!
That man is desperate for money. He will sue me. I'm not going to court with Ric Flair.
I mean, he could probably talk to Vince and have Jerry McDevitt take the case. So that'd be it. That's a bad booking decision on the brainless part.
Yes. So I know. Let's not say we did. I don't need 9 million-year-old Ric Flair showing up at my house to try to chop me. I'll sick my dog after him.
Speaking of 9 million-year-olds, I think I saw somewhere where Bobby Fish was interested, I think, in joining Ring of Honor.
It was funny.
Who's been like a fish out of water since he left AEW. And he did win his boxing match. I can't wait till he has his second one. And yeah, I heard it's not going to be against Blow Up Doll, but I don't think it's going to be much better.
My favorite thing in regards to Bobby Fish, I almost said Bobby Lashley, Bobby Fish, is the fact that, like you said, his career has kind of floundered since he was let go from AEW because Kyle O'Reilly had a neck issue and Adam Cole, baby, had the concussions. So obviously, there was, like you said, he was a fish out of water. But I guess last week he made some kind of post where he was going off on Orange Cassidy for some random reason. There was nothing that kind of started this. It just he randomly posted this. And people were talking because he said, I remember what one of the lines was. He said something about, I worked with Pop Warner. Wait, hold on.
Yes, that there is proof of that somewhere.
I couldn't believe he finally admitted it. Bobby Fish is at least, I say it was the 1620s. Obviously, we have facts that say it was in the 1820s because he wrestled Abraham Lincoln. So obviously it's very possible that he crossed paths with Pop Warner, considering they both were born at least in the 1800s.
Well, to be fair, Bobby Fish was actually, it was Cain, Abel, Seth, Bobby Fish.
Bobby Fish or Ric Flair?
Well, I know at some point Ric Flair was there when Adam named Dirt. So, I think it's debatable. Ric Flair, Bobby Fish.
I'm just saying.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that if Ric Flair was numero uno when the serpent came and talked about the apple, we all know that Ric Flair would have chopped that freaking serpent to hell.
Is that where Evil Uno came from?
Yes, Jim Cornette. It was definitely from catering.
You did bring up Orange Cassidy, and as much as he got some grief from Bobby Fish, he got a big, in my view, stamp of approval from one of the biggest legends in all of professional wrestling.
Are you talking about?
This is Sting! Bam! 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 We saw the wild kicks from Sting, and we saw Sting do the Sting like gorilla thing where he went. My favorite part of the whole thing was when he did that, and opponent was no selling, and then all of a sudden Sting came out and like clocked him with like a legit clothesline. It was fucking great. I loved it. It was one of my favorites this week.
That was the lone highlight of AEW Dynamite, if you ask me. Everything else about it was drizzle shits.
Come on, man. Kenny Omega and El Vikingo del Fantasma.
De Minnesota. Okay, I will go back and I'll watch that. You know about how I feel about Kenny Omega. I will go back and I will watch that match.
They're good.
But, really, they turned me away when I saw what they did. I was like, I'm done. Of course you would cover up the part of the truck where CM Punk was on when Nikki and Maddie are getting carted out of there in an ambulance.
Which, really brings up a lot of interesting things. So they're still keeping him on the side of the 18-wheelers because he's still under contract. It sounds like, there may be like some wiggle room of trying to work things out, maybe, possibly, and then CM Punk goes and puts some nitroglycerin or kerosene or gasoline or whatever type of incinerator to possibly burn a bridge and once again showcase why he should not be back in AEW. When he posted and then took down from Instagram a thing where he talked about how Jon Moxley didn't want to do business or like.
What happened was with Moxley, he didn't like the idea of the squash match. I guess Moxley had mentioned Rocky 3, and Punk was like, I've never seen a Rocky movie. He, as a wrestler, almost got kicked out of my top 10, top 20, top 50, top 100. What?
Wrestling would not have become what wrestling became without Rocky 3.
What? I was subjected to witnessing the Rocky movie that should have never existed. And you, Mr. I've seen Slapshot, I'm a huge sports fan, have never seen a Rocky movie. Not one. There's only I think Star Wars and Harry Potter might be the only franchise, and I don't even think Harry Potter has more movies than Rocky. I mean, I couldn't believe he said that.
Just where like he calls out Dave Meltzer, he calls Chris Jericho a stooge and a liar, and like the thing was, I used to believe that Punk shot from the hip and was 100% speaking truth, and then when I found out, okay, there were several times where he actually either fabricated something or just absolutely embellished the truth. As much as I'd like to believe his post, I don't, and he comes off, at least to me, as somebody who's still bitter, resentful, and entitled. And as much as Dynamite ratings have suffered, like it didn't suffer immediately, but has suffered since. Like, I still would not want that man in my locker room based off of the things he said. So he's saying that Moxley refused to put him over. Well, what the hell happened at All Out?
It wasn't even about the fact that he got put over. He said that he couldn't believe that Moxley wanted to put him over. And he's like, I've never had that happen, like where somebody was, I think that's what I could be wrong now. I think about, because like honestly,
into it was Moxley was refusing to put CM Punk over, and it felt like he was saying that about the match that they ended up having a few weeks before All Out, and Punk was saying, "Hey, I am not medically cleared to do this match," and they're like, "Well, we'll do a squash match, and you'll have a couple weeks to." It's like it would have made more sense if they would have waited a couple weeks and just let him be healed and have the match at All Out. And I remember on the podcast we were specifically like, well, what the F was that for? And because he had that foot issue. So, and I remember like watching him and you're like, he's not moving too well.
No.
Like, is he even out there? And I don't think he would be forced to do that. He specifically said, even in that post, like, I'm not going to put my the company above my health.
Because that's what he did in WWE.
But apparently he did that because he went out and had that squash match with Jon Moxley. So
the way
again, it makes it really hard for me to believe everything the guy is saying. It really does.
My favorite part about this whole CM Punk thing is that you and I are on opposite ends of this. Because you're on the one where CM Punk's the piece of shit, and I'm on the side where, it's the elite. I'm taking CM Punk's side on this one. I'm sorry. You don't act like a bunch of buffoons after saying, like, we got to put things in the past and get, people need to build their bridges and get over, and then mock the dude in his hometown. Then you blatantly cover the thing on the truck just because you can't have him on the freaking thing. Who gives a shit? If they see it on there, maybe people will tune in. Oh, shit, there's CM Punk's thing. Maybe you won't have 300,000 people leave from the end of Big Bang Theory until the second segment of Dynamite. I'm sorry. I
am not taking the side of the elite. I'm specifically taking the side of, like, I don't believe CM Punk when he says that Jon Moxley refused to put him over, because Jon Moxley put him over 2 weeks later. I don't believe him.
My biggest thing is that he could have thrown Moxley under the bus through all that. He didn't really throw Moxley under the bus like when he called Jericho a liar and a stooge.
He basically said that Moxley refused to put him over, and that had never ever happened to him. And it made it sound like he thought that Moxley was being unprofessional by refusing to job to him. And the thing that makes it, to me, impossible to like believe, 2 weeks later Moxley put him over. What sense does that make? Moxley is one of those dudes who specifically, like, he wants this stuff to make sense. What the hell sense does it make to have a squash match where you beat the hell out of CM Punk and then you have a rematch a couple weeks later after you absolutely destroyed him and have him win? I don't get it. Get it.
When they did that, we said the same thing. It didn't make any sense. Because like you said, when he had the match where he got squashed by Moxley, he was not moving. He was walking very gingerly. And then he got hurt again in the rematch. I'm sorry. And I agree with him. Like, when he says, I'm going to put my health over the company, that's because look at all the shit he did for WWE. He put the company before himself, and then look at him.
But all that being said, like, this, for me, just makes me even more like, if I were Tony Khan, I don't trust this dude no matter what. And as much as he brings some eyeballs to the table, is he going to end up poisoning from within everything and everybody else? I don't know what he, like, why did he call Jericho a stooge and a liar? I mean, I understand at this point, Jericho, like, whatever company he's in, he is all, excuse the expression, he is all in, and he will support that company no matter what. But Jericho, I mean, called Punk a cancer, so it feels like Punk is like, oh yeah, he's a stooge because he called me a cancer, and I don't like him. And it all goes back to when Punk left WWE. Jericho had his podcast back then. Jericho apparently reached out to Punk and said, hey, dude, I'd love to have you on my podcast. We don't need to talk wrestling. Let's talk music. And
Hockey.
I'd love to talk to you. And Punk, like, had this thing, I think it was on the Colt Cabana podcast, where he talked about, more or less, Jericho wanted him on the podcast to talk wrestling and to be this, that, and the other thing so he could get ratings. It's like going, you know what? Jericho had, like, the #1 podcast before that, and he still has, like, the #1 podcast. He didn't need you. And as much as there have been things about Jericho lately where I'm kind of like, I think there's a lot going on with CM Punk where, again, I don't appreciate anybody walking out on contracts or walking out on a company that's paying them. And Punk walked out on WWE, and, you know, it's jacked up that they did what they did, you know, as far as, like, going, allegedly, you know, like, going, okay, you got an infection, we're going to give you, what was it, the Z-Pack? But he goes into AEW, has a good run there for a year, talks about how it's the best run and the happiest he's been. You know, a year into the company, and there were some reports about there were some things going on behind the scenes that weren't great. And it's like going, okay, well, was it really the greatest year of your life? Well, if it was the greatest wrestling year in your career, why did you do what you did at All Out? This is why I have a credibility issue with anything he says now, because clearly he either was lying when he said it was the greatest year in his professional wrestling career and the thing he enjoyed the most, or what he said at All Out was the truth. Which one is it? You said both.
Chris Jericho, Jay. We're going to talk about, you know, and I understand the credibility part, because yes, I agree that there's some issues that I would have, especially
you can't
after.
Say both.
But, you know, It's the same thing as Chris Jericho saying, I am never going back to WWE. I am happy being here in AEW. But you and I both know that when his 10-year contract expires when he's 61 and WWE calls and says, hey, do you want your WWE Hall of Fame induction? You know Chris Jericho is going to have the greatest induction speech of all time.
I'm sure he will.
So, and my big thing is, I blame Tony Khan for all of this because he doesn't have a pair. Obviously, he just wants to sit here and do his fantasy booking with real people's livelihoods and not, handle things the way he should. So now we're sitting here and watching AEW Dynamite where your douchebag EVPs are covering up the truck because a guy they don't like is on the side of the truck. We have no idea what the fuck's going on with CM Punk. He's just doing cryptic shit and talking shit and posting stuff and taking it down. We haven't seen my poor cousin Chris Guy and since the whole situation has happened. I my heart breaks for that. And it's just, I don't want to wait until season 6 or 7 of Dark Side of the Ring to find out what happened. How is it that Vince McMahon has the shit come out and there was a resolution to that investigation, and that investigation started either around or a little bit after what happened at AEW All Out? It's just bothersome because nobody wants to talk about it. People like Ariel Helwani wanted to talk to Tony Khan, and Tony Khan didn't want to answer the questions about it. Well, of course everybody wants to know about what's going on with the brawl. It's been months. It's last summer. There's got to be there's got to be some kind of a resolution on that before. But I blame Tony Khan. Of all the things, I blame Tony Khan.
Speaking of another thing we could blame Tony Khan for.
Oh, boy.
Is in Bulgaria. Because AEW has done nothing with him, and whatever ideas were pitched to him, he allegedly was not fond of, and they couldn't come to a resolution as far as what could go on. All right, me and my wife are going to Bulgaria, back to my homeland, literally my homeland, to hang out because
you got nada.
And he sounds like he's ready, willing, and able to work. He just wants to make sure that he's not walking out on the company like CM Punk did. He's like, give me something and let's move forward. And
I cannot wait to see who is the first wrestler that Tony Khan finally cracks and just releases from his contract, or she from her contract. And I'm not talking about like Big Swole or Stu Grayson when Stu Grayson's contract expired. I'm not talking about that. What was it? Jimmy Havoc. That was his name. Jimmy Havoc was the guy he released because he was a piece of shit. I can't wait until the first person who actually has to get released. And believe me, Miro should have been released already so he can go and actually do something in WWE because we know Triple H would do something with it. And I know Tony Khan doesn't want to hand WWE anybody else because he literally let WWE's biggest face walk back to the company.
Right.
So is it going to be Punk? Is it going to be Miro? Is it somebody down the line? I mean, I want to know what it's going to finally take, other than being an absolute piece of shit of a human being, for Tony Khan to let you out of your contract. That's what I want to know.
But the thing that for me is really disappointing, things didn't start well as far as how the character and the booking of Miro, even though he was undefeated for a while, but like he found the character and the booking got better. He became TNT champion and was okay doing that. And then all of a sudden it was like the bottom fell out. when he was in WWE, it's like they would give him shit stuff and he would make it work. Just like one go, in my view, a GOAT, Damian Sandow, would take a bunch of shit and make it work. Rusev, I thought, was very similar in that way, aka Miro, was similar in that way. And the fact that Miro is there in AEW and is getting pitch stuff and like more or less kind of like, I don't think I could make this work. I don't know. But like, I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I know that he should probably be getting a lot better than what he's got.
And apparently, the booking decision that pissed him off, that kind of set him away, was he was supposed to be booked to lose as one of the final two people in a battle royal that Adam Page was supposed to win, and he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to. He said he didn't want to job out to Page. So
interesting.
Honestly, I would like to just see him go back to WWE at the end of the day. He was the one guy hitting, like you said, Damian Sandow. Those are the two guys that entertained the fuck out of me. I want to see good wrestling, and I want to be entertained. That's why it's called WWE. Rusev entertained me because Rusev Day was fantastic. I still remember the day he beat Randy Orton, where he snuck up and pinned him, and he ran back to the back area. And I forget who. I think it was Renee Young. Freaking interviewed him, and she goes, "You seem elated." I don't know what that means.
It was perfect.
It was one of my favorite things that happened with Rusev because it was just fantastic. It was funny as shit.
So as much as we're giving Tony Khan a lot of grief, one thing that he deserves an awful lot of credit for as far as what his performers do is, unless you are the top of the top in WWE, you have to pay a lot of your own travel expenses. One thing Tony Khan does is he pays the travel expenses in the hotels for his performers, no matter where they go. So I have to give him credit for that. And as much as business-wise, you may look at it and see what Vince has done into the Triple H era, and like, oh, well, that makes more business sense. It's like there's such thing as taking care of your performer and not nickel and diming them. So I'm going to give Tony Khan props for this. The fact that other people have attested to this, and Chris Jericho came out and said AEW is the only company in North America that actually has taken care of all, not part of, all of my travel expenses, whether it was a house show, whether it was a TV taping, only company to ever do that in North America.
And I'll say this, because Dax Harwood was another person who came out and said it. And he said that's one thing about Tony Khan that he said that nobody else will do. He goes, he pays for all of our expenses when we travel, no matter what. He goes, and that did play. He goes, that played a part of my decision of, he goes, don't think that didn't play a part of my decision of whether I went or not.
Right.
But I will say this. Cornette did come out on his show and say in WWE, domestically, they only pay for their airfare, which we kind of knew when they did the story time when Mick Foley sold his plane ticket and drove with a bag of popcorn 10 hours to the next location. But WWE will flip the bill if they're international, no matter who it is. They flip the bill for everyone, for international, for hotel, flights, and all that stuff. So it might not be everywhere domestically, and I know they travel a lot more domestically, but at least you got to give them, because it's got to be hard to try to get in and out of places, especially if you're international and traveling in all these different countries.
Right.
So I'm not going to take that away from Tony Khan. Yes, that is incredible that he does that, and not everything he does is horrible.
Does Tony Khan treat his wrestlers like independent contractors? Yes, he does, because they do not necessarily have to be exclusive to AEW, and if they have outside interests, they could actually pursue them, whether it's having a Twitch account or whether it's deciding to be in a movie. Now, I think specifically with Moxley, when Moxley signed his new contract, he's like, all right, dude, I don't want you to be in death matches anymore. If you're going to be with me, I want you to sign a wrestling-wise an exclusive deal. But in general, they are independent contractors who decide to sign for the company. I don't think they sign their life away like they do in WWE.
Which was funny too, because remember, years ago in NXT, when a lot of those guys that were working in NXT were also doing stuff outside. I mean, how Walter and Pete Dunne were both bringing the NXT UK Championship to like Progress and Evolve and all those shows that they were working at. So,
but that's because Triple H was the one involved.
And now we've seen maybe WWE is going to loosen the reins a little bit. Nakamura just wrestled Muta a couple months ago. Granted, we haven't seen Nakamura since.
Sad.
But yes, very sad. Speaking of, it's a horrible segue, and I cannot believe we went this far in, because Nakamura wrestled Muta. Muta's going into the WWE Hall of Fame. We have a new inductee in the WWE Hall of Fame. Now, I'm just going to say this really, really quickly. I was hoping for Cyndi Lauper. I have a personal appreciation for Cyndi Lauper for what she's done. She worked with WWE. She was on the soundtrack for one of my all-time favorite movies, The Goonies. She had Captain Lou Albano in her music videos. Cyndi Lauper, without question, should be in the WWE Hall of Fame for the celebrity wing. But leave it to WWE to pull one name out that would there was only one person they could have done, Jay. That would have been like, yeah, that actually makes sense more so than Cyndi Lauper, and it's not a slight on Cyndi Lauper. And that happens to be the incomparable Andy Kaufman is going into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Very deserving. That segment on David Letterman, they refer to that as like basically the segment that made Letterman famous.
Yep.
Originally, they were supposed to come out there for a short bit, but ended up like keeping on going with it. And David Letterman became David Letterman in part because of that. And because of the level of respect Andy Kaufman had for professional wrestling and selling the gimmick and making people believe, like, he brought the Memphis territory to a different level, and he brought a different level of legitimacy and interest into professional wrestling.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, like, before the show, I was listening to Cornette talk about that. And it was a nice 15 full minutes that he talked about that. And he gave such a glowing endorsement because it wasn't even just the fact that Andy Kaufman was trying to wrestle. It's not like it was like it is now, where we sit here and we compliment Logan Paul and Bad Bunny for going in there and having really good wrestling matches against some of these guys and taking it seriously. Andy Kaufman was going in there and having these 3-minute squash matches against women, and he was doing it just to get heat. And he used all of that heat to help put over Jerry Lawler, who didn't even need it. Andy Kaufman is a very, very special talent that has stepped into a wrestling ring. I have a greater appreciation for him and what he was able to do with Jerry Lawler in Memphis and what they did for professional wrestling, putting it on a scale. And two things that came up from that really stood out for me with him. Number one, he actually went to Vince McMahon first, Vince Sr. And Vince Sr. was like, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to make any sense. I can't do this. God only knows that this, Vince Jr. was in charge all those years ago. It definitely would have happened there. And number two, he didn't cash a single paycheck.
So Chris Brown, one thing I'll say is when WWE started the Hall of Fame, Andy Kaufman was already long dead. So it's not like this of Vader, where we knew Vader had a short window of time.
He even told them.
Vince decided to not honor that short window of time, despite the fact that he knew that Vader was a bona fide Hall of Famer. The fact that the Macho Man was still alive and everybody and their mother knew he was a bona fide Hall of Famer and didn't get his opportunity. Those are the things that I have the biggest problem with. I don't have a problem with the Andy Kaufman thing and him not getting in until now. It would have made more sense if it happened earlier, but it's not like, hey, well, we have this living person. Let's wait until they're dead. Because that feels still at this moment like what's going to happen to Demo. It feels pretty clear that they didn't
Midnight Express.
A huge problem with Barry Darso, aka Smash. Axe having that issue allegedly with being allergic to, I think it was shellfish, and he got deathly sick. And Vince, for whatever reason, either didn't believe him or felt like he couldn't trust him anymore, and now has held it against him for 30 plus years for being allergic to something. Like, was there something more going on there?
Apparently, when they had that lawsuit where a lot of wrestlers were suing Vince for concussions, they were both on that list. So I think that might have had another thing to do with it.
But I mean, I come back to the idea of a Hall of Fame should have zero to do about publicity, should have zero to do with whether or not you get along with the people. It has to do with the stuff you did. Like, they were supposed to be a joke gimmick that was making fun of the LOD, and they got it fucking over. And they were, up until recently, the longest holding WWF tag team champions of all time.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, Vince is like, no. You want to talk about over the Coco Beware line? They're way over that. And Vince saying no. And, I mean, not that Triple H has a long tenure here, but Triple H, at least at this point, saying no, kind of bull crap. But and when Demolition hopefully gets in, maybe I will change my stance on the WWE Hall of Fame. Until then, no bueno.
I'm going to give Triple H a chance because I think he got all the right decisions this year. I think he hit the nail right on the head with all of his inductions, including Muta, especially Muta. But really quickly, to go back to the Andy Kaufman thing, allegedly, Andy Kaufman is allegedly been dead for a lot longer.
If he shows up for his Hall of Fame induction, I will tune in.
I can see it happening because that would be the most Andy Kaufman thing that Andy Kaufman could ever do. And I'm curious too, because if Jerry Lawler had the health issues and he makes a hell of a lot of, obviously he makes the most sense of anybody to induct Andy Kaufman into the Hall of Fame, especially because Jerry Jarrett just passed away. Jeff Jarrett is working in AEW, and he just wrestled for the tag team, the trios, and the international, formerly known as the All-Atlantic 24/7 Championship. But, I mean, other than Jimmy Hart, you don't have really many more people to induct Andy.
The only other person that could either induct him or accept the induction for him,
Carrey.
Jim Carrey.
If I'll tell you right now, Jim Carrey dresses up.
Clifton.
If Jim Carrey shows up as Andy Kaufman and accepts the award for Andy Kaufman, I'll tune in for that. I have to tune in for that because it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, since we're on it, and then we're going to put it to bed. What happens if it is Jerry Lawler that is inducting him into the Hall of Fame and Andy Kaufman comes out? That's got to be the mark-out moment of the year.
The mark-out moment of the year.
It's definitely the mark-out moment of the year. Definitely.
I mean, would be like literally Andy Kaufman doing a 40-year like
bit.
kayfabe is real.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely ridiculous, but it would be the most Andy Kaufman thing ever.
Especially because it's in Los Angeles. And they just randomly decide to induct him. Jay, I know this is like the tinfoil hat of all tinfoil hats. And it's mainly because of the fact that Cornette might have spoken into existence and other people have spoken into existence. So now I kind of want to speak it into existence. I want to see Andy Kaufman accept the award for the Hall of Fame induction. I do. I really want to see that because that would be the greatest bit, the greatest joke, the greatest thing that Andy Kaufman or anybody in history would have done.
It would. So, quite honestly, if it happened, it might be the second biggest thing in wrestling. From him going against Lawler and doing that bit and having the stuff on Letterman be like, Andy Kaufman returned.
At the WWE Hall of Fame. Not at the Academy Awards, not at the Emmys, not at like the 2000 celebration in New York. No. Andy Kaufman returns after 40 years
of being dead
to accept
WWE Hall of Fame induction.
Jay, that's going to be the first thing to ever win my mark-out moment of the year and my brainless moment of the year.
Oh.
That's such good shit.
Is referee induction, because allegedly there will be a referee inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Of the names out there, one of the Hebners, Lil Nate, Timmy White, Mike Chioda. Who would be your pick of that list?
Tim White.
I agree. I agree with that.
Listen, it's not a slight on Mike Chioda. Mike Chioda was there for 30 years. He was senior referee for a very long time. Mike Chioda is going to get his moment. And I've been saying it for years on the podcast that they should be putting referees in. But Chioda definitely deserves to get in. Earl Hebner, I don't know. With the things that he was doing when they were selling the merchandise, I don't.
If you're talking about, like I always come back to, if you're talking about Hall of Fame in moments, 33 million people watched him and his brother during that match against Andre and Hulk, which led to WrestleMania 4 in the tournament to dethrone Hulk Hogan for the first time in 4 years. And I mean, how much money did he pay for the plastic surgery? Hogan saw the dollar bills coming out of his pockets from the plastic surgery that the $1 Million Man paid for. I mean, if you're talking about moments like that, I mean, how many were the Hebner brothers involved in? That being said, the fact that Vince McMahon is in a spot of control, I'm going to say it's not the Hebners, and that's why I think referee Timmy White makes an awful lot of sense. He has since passed away in the past couple of years, but he was Andre the Giant's handler and was a referee in many, many high-profile matches. So I would say Timmy White will be the one.
Earl Hebner Hebner, like you were saying about what being in those moments. The thing for me with Earl Hebner was I couldn't tell you how many times it didn't feel like the main event unless Earl Hebner was in the ring at WrestleMania. He was in the ring when Hogan, beat Slaughter at 7. He was in the ring. I don't even know. Was he in the ring for? I got to remember. Oh my god, I don't remember if he was in the ring for
Remember
HBK. And
Joey Morella, Andre the Giant match.
yes, I do remember that. And that was another name that they had mentioned was Joey Morella. And honestly, these are all names that are deserving.
His uncle.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, even and another thing was Earl Hebner was the referee for the Montreal Screwjob. I know it's a dark day in wrestling history, but
memorable.
Yeah. Tim White, I mean, being bloodied after getting thrown from the Hell in a Cell. But I think that, like you said, him being Andre's handler and doing the stuff backstage gives him the edge. Plus, didn't they use his bar for a bar fight with the
several fight scenes at the Friendly Tap in Rhode Island.
Yep, that's it. I think it's him. It has to be him. And I don't think there's a wrestling fan on planet Earth that's going to be pissed that Tim White's going to get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to get to with the WrestleMania stuff that I'm a little bit disappointed in, to say the least, is we found out this week that it's not going to be a Cinnamon Toast Crunch stairs match with Bobby Lashley and or Brock Lesnar. It's Rey Mysterio being the spokesperson for Cinnamon Toast Crunch Cinnamojis. Cinnamojis cereal. I was very disappointed by that. I wanted to have a Cinnamon Toast Crunch stairs match with somebody, even if they brought Captain Wedgie back for one match so he could have the second stairs match and see where that all goes. But, I mean, I guess, it is what it is. And we're going to get the Cinnamojis and not Cinnamon Toast Crunch match. Very disappointing. I'd put on my sad face.
Jay, what's sad about it is you actually won another stairs match after the terrible first edition of the stairs match that we got at the first and only ever edition of tables, ladders, chairs, and stairs.
They should have Matt Stairs in a stairs match.
Former Red Sox outfielder Matt Stairs.
Yes, professional hitter for the A's.
Greatest pinch hitter in baseball history. There was honestly, real quick, since you mentioned him, there was 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and Matt Stairs was going to hit a home run if he pinched hit for somebody.
Yes. The crackhead lobbyist that probably came up with that was Nick Khan. He's looking for any revenue stream he can for WWE. At this point, WrestleMania, they've sold in excess, I think, of like 126 or 127,000 tickets that they're trying. They finally came up with how they're kind of have the stadium set up, and they've released more tickets at this point. And I think they're planning on each night having roughly around 75,000, but the stadium itself, depending on how they set it up, could do up to 100,000. I'm going to guess they're going to end up close to that 75,000 for each night.
Probably 75, 80.
Putting it out of the realm of possibility. As much as Stone Cold Steve Austin came out this week and said, yeah, I'm done in the ring. Guess what? He said he was done in the ring for 19 years before that, and he showed up. So I'm not 100% buying it. I would love if LA Knight came out to the ring and did his own open challenge and not accepted Bobby Lashley at an open challenge. I want to see LA Knight and Stone Cold Steve Austin. What?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What in a yeah? A what in a yeah?
A what in a yeah? Steve Austin did say that he was done wrestling in the ring, and he said he doesn't mind showing up from time to time. Oh, he's definitely gonna be at WrestleMania this year. That was the given right there when he said that. But I don't want to see LA Knight really does not need to get squashed at WrestleMania. I understand that it's Steve Austin. He's the
Squashed last year. He yeah, he took a majority of Stone Cold Steve Austin's offense, and Austin said apparently he potatoed Kevin Owens several times last year, and he's like, I'm surprised he didn't give me a receipt for some of that, but he's a good kid. I would love to see LA Knight and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Completely safe match for Stone Cold, not like going against Brock Lesnar as much as I'd like to see Stone Cold against Brock Lesnar because we never got the match that we were supposed to. But I also understand Stone Cold Steve Austin doesn't want to break his frickin' neck against Brock Lesnar.
Right. I have a lot of theories, and I'm going to come up with an idea for what they're going to do with Austin. But there's so many, I don't know. I think
talk about your theories next week on the podcast.
Yes. And wow. I don't even know, like, I would love to see Austin. I really would. I would love to see him do anything at WrestleMania because it's Steve Austin. But I don't know if I really want to see. I mean, if he's fighting LA Knight, Jay, we're gonna get an Undertaker John Cena match at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say this: did somebody forget to tell Steve Austin that you can't get any more secured onto my Rushmore than already being solidified in forever? So coming out and saying that he potatoed Kevin Owens last year at WrestleMania doesn't do anything to improve his stock. You can't get any higher than number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So a couple other things I have on my list of things would be Kevin Nash talked about a potential Dark Side of the Ring on the life of Scott Hall. Now, one thing I have to say about this is I don't know how much they could add to what we saw from the E60 segment or from other documentaries we've seen on Scott Hall, except for taking on the last couple of years of his life, which for the most part, it seemed like he had mostly cleaned up his life. And it sounds like from the way Kevin Nash described it that Scott Hall had possibly started drinking again and slipped on a thing of ice as he was trying to make his drink on the rocks. I don't know how much that adds to anything to his story. We already know about the stuff of him, killing that dude in self-defense. We know about his drinking problem. We know about all of his life problems. I don't see where a Dark Side of the Ring expose is going to really shine a light on anything else where we're like going, wow, I didn't know that. I think it'd just be a retread.
I don't know. If anybody can come up with some new material, it's the guys from the Dark Side of the Ring. And if anything, it's going to be very similar to the story they did with Brian Pillman. I mean, we knew a good chunk of what they were talking about with Brian Pillman, but obviously they found other things that, people didn't know.
But I guess we shall see. And you know me, I will check what they do out to see if it's, an enhancement or something where they tell more of the story where you get to know a little bit more about him. When Peacock did the thing on Ric Flair, I mean, there were a couple of nuggets of new information where I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But in general, it was just a lot of retread.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So one name that WWE signed not that long ago, one Dragon Lee, is having his debut match at NXT Stand and Deliver, and he is challenging immediately for the North American title against one of your favorites,
Wesley. The lazy booking name. Your name is Wesley. Okay, Wesley what? No, it's Wes Lee.
It's humorous.
We're going to have Wes Lee, and we're going to have Keith Lee, but we can't have Trevor Lee. We have to have Cameron Grimes,
who apparently has gotten very jacked up in the 5 months that he's been waiting for this opportunity on the main roster. But Dragon Lee, has all the bona fides. The dude should be a star in WWE, and putting him immediately in a title picture, as much as I think there's something to be said for building somebody up. I mean, when Hulk Hogan went to WCW, his first match was for the championship. It made an awful lot of sense. When you got somebody who's got a reputation, I don't see anything wrong with doing something like this every once in a while. You can't do it for everybody, but I'm okay with this, and I'm looking forward to this match. I think it's going to, as much as there's really no storyline, this is going to be perhaps one of the highlights of the weekend as far as in-ring action.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, this isn't the first time they've done this, because years ago, not too long ago, but like 4 or 5 years ago, when Ricochet debuted in the NXT North American ladder match that they determined who the first ever NXT North American champion was. So it's done it before. And honestly, I know that he has had kind of a rocky career in WWE, but he's got a match at WrestleMania this year, and he didn't have one last year.
Right.
He fought both members of Los Lotharios, the SmackDown, I think it was SmackDown WrestleMania.
Right.
But so at least he's got a match this year.
But good on Dragon Lee and getting an opportunity. But one thing that is out there is that apparently higher ups in WWE have not liked the reaction or lack of reaction they've been getting from NXT crowds lately. And this kind of shows what has happened to the NXT brand in the last several years. Is you used to be able to go into WrestleMania and sell out the arena that they were doing, nearby, whether like for Los Angeles, if they went to the Staples Center, they could sell that out for an NXT takeover. Apparently they can't do that anymore, and they're doing, stand and deliver at the Performance Center. And they're encouraging the talent to bring their family there, so the family will actually get loud and react. And again, it just kind of talks about how they were at this level a couple of years ago, and Vince McMahon decided nope, it's just developmental, and we're going to treat it as such.
And it's such a shame too, because that NXT Championship match between Carmelo Hayes and Braun Breaker is going to be an all-timer. That match is going to hit. The triple threat tag team match that they're going to have for the tag team championships is going to be a lot of fun, because there's going to be 3 teams that are going to beat the shit out of each other. And hell, the North American Championship, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There has never been an average NXT takeover. They've all been really good or great. And even the worst match on a takeover is better than 2/3 of the card on most WWE pay-per-views. Right. But right. I agree that it is a shame that the fans aren't reacting they used to, especially because if you watch NXT, you notice that the loudest reaction they get is from the dudes wearing the Chase U stuff.
Right.
So, those are planted people. But they don't – I don't think the problem is that other than Brecker and Carmelo Hayes, they don't have the star power in NXT. That's why they had to bring back Johnny Gargano to wrestle Grayson Waller.
Well, and it's nothing against, like, they got top-notch performers like Dragunov and JD McDonough, who had
Yeah.
a incredible match this past week. And if you see the pictures that they posted post-match from what the heck they did to each other, I mean, Dragunov has brought Walter, aka Gunther, to some of the best matches I've seen in the past 5 years. And you could have a great match, but your character might not attach with the audience quite as well as you'd like. And
Those I'm glad you mentioned JD McDonough and Ilya Dragunov because those two were two of my three favorite moments in NXT UK takeover history moments those guys were in. Because McDonough, when he was, Jordan Devlin, and he beat up his opponent before his match, and he had to have an open challenge, and I said it too.
yeah,
You go back
yeah,
7 years ago when we talked about it on the podcast, or 6-7 years ago. I said everybody's gonna pop if Finn Balor comes out, and he came out and wrestled him, it was nuts. And then Dragunov when he fought Cesaro, I'm sorry, Claudio Castagnoli.
right.
Like you said, him and Gunther had great matches for the NXT UK Championship. They had the best match of the year a couple of years ago. So, they have the star power if they use it right, but I think that people are starting to, it's lacking a little bit luster because they don't have your Adam Coles, you don't have your Johnny Garganos, you don't have. Once Johnny Gargano left NXT was never going to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, you had Bobby Roode, you had Tommaso Ciampa, you had Samoa Joe, you had Shinsuke Nakamura, you had Sami Zayn, you had Finn Balor,
EC3.
you had an awful lot of pieces. And even at points, the Velveteen Dream to me was like the hottest act on the roster, and then he did what he did allegedly.
Yeah.
And stuff has kind of fallen apart for him since then. But all that being said, it's interesting to see where they went from being able to sell out during WrestleMania weekend like 18,000 seat arenas to being in the Performance Center.
Right. It's sad too. It really is.
Yeah. So one name rumored, and we've talked about it before, and it was rumored during Royal Rumble, possibly returning to WWE, and now you're hearing a little bit of murmurs about him returning maybe post-Mania, is one Matt Cardona, aka Zack Ryder. What do you say the percentage is of Zack Ryder showing up in the next month on WWE?
He teased the fact that he would be the one that would challenge Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. He teased the same thing with the Royal Rumble. He's been teasing his return to WWE. Zack Ryder, if you're going to do it, either shit or get off the pot. You've been calling yourself the king of the indies because you've actually had a really good run since your release from WWE. You were NWA World Heavyweight Champion. You've done what you've done. I mean, you've won the tournament and on Jericho's cruise. If you're gonna come back, Zach or Matt Cardona, just do it. All right, don't keep doing this because eventually people aren't going to care. And frankly, no matter if you do come back or not, you're not going to surpass what your wife is doing right now. Your wife is the most entertaining person I have ever seen. She has killed this character. She's absolutely killed it. She has done a phenomenal job. I have been on board with this. Chelsea Green has been my favorite female wrestler since she debuted at the Royal Rumble, or returned at the Royal Rumble. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that she's getting this opportunity because if there's anybody out there that deserves to have the opportunity to showcase their abilities, it's her. So,
all right. All right, Brainless One, you got anything else you'd like to cover? You know what? I have one more thing I definitely want to cover. Um, Alexa Bliss on the Masked Singer, but also talking about she from sportskeeda.com. Thank you, Alexa. But basically, she came out and said that when she used to be in competition, she would go and tan in tanning beds, and has had some, I believe, precancerous cells
Yep.
on her skin because of what she did. She is not that old.
No.
And to have issues like that, I mean, yeah, she needs to take care of herself as far
Agreed.
as that goes. And it's cool that, she's able to do those outside stuff, but, realizing like, oh, yeah, me doing that was not worth what happened. And it makes me think of dudes like Hulk Hogan who are always like tan, super tan. Like it's coming at some point, and I'm guessing it probably already did, but it was taken care of. But it sucks that somebody so young has to deal with something like skin cancer, or at least precancerous cells for skin cancer, and taking time away from the ring to do this.
Yeah, I agree, and it's unfortunate because, like you said, she's in her early 30s, and to be dealing with this stuff. But again, people just do whatever they want to do because they want to excel in whatever they do, and they don't think about the consequences until it's too late.
Yeah.
So, and that was actually one of the two topics I had left. My last thing is apparently Roxanne Perez has already been medically cleared again. She passes out in the ring. She gets, carted out because they're doing the Shawn Michaels thing. Stripped the title of her. It's not like she didn't defend it in 30 days or anything. She literally just defended it and then fainted. But yet you were quick to strip the title of her, and now it's less than 30 days later, and she's already medically cleared, and there's talks of her being back in this match. So when you were saying the booking decisions, I thought this was definitely part of that too, because I had no idea why the hell they did this.
Right.
Like, if there was some like serious issue, I don't know. I mean, it's just because it's so vague and hush that they're not giving too much information on. It's like we don't know what to do, and I don't understand why they just reacted too quickly. And it's probably because of the fact that we're sitting here and like Roman Reigns goes over 30 days without defending two championships. Brock Lesnar defended the title whenever the fuck he wanted. Brock Lesnar would just show up whenever Brock Lesnar wanted to as the WWE Universal Champion. Who's going to tell Brock Lesnar not to do something?
So one person that we definitely don't have to have a fear of not defending his title is Gunther. Gunther is now become the second longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in the last 35 years. The only person in the last 35 years ahead of him is the Honky Tonk Man, which tells me that we need to get the honkometer back out.
No,
and we need to see what Gunther could do about this. He is not passed out. To be clear, the Macho Man Randy Savage, who had the Intercontinental title for 14 months, a shade under what the Honky Tonk Man did as the record. But they're talking the last 35 years. If you go back with the Macho Man, you're talking Macho Man held that title from 86 to 87, so you're talking 36 years ago. So they're trying to be a little cute with that, but
Why not just say that he is the longest reigning intercontinental champion of the 21st century?
You can say that very easily because he is.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned it. So he had a problem with the fact that Drew and Sheamus both pinned their opponents in the 5-pack challenge to defend him at WrestleMania. I don't want 2 opponents. I just want 1. Fine. So we're going to get Sheamus and Drew McIntyre wrestling against each other. Oh, yes, I'm just so upset about the fact that we're going to get Drew McIntyre and Sheamus wrestling against each other because it's not like it's fun to watch, just like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn.
Right.
Just like the Usos and the New Day. But so they get to a point where Sheamus hits the bro kick and Drew McIntyre hits the Claymore at the same time, and they're both getting counted out because they both hit their finishers at the same time. And before the referee gets to 10, Gunther gets into the ring, tells the referee to stop, and says, I want a winner. I want just a single opponent for WrestleMania. And then the rest of Imperium attacks Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, and it gets a double disqualification, leading to us once again getting a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. Why?
And this falls into a similar category as Rhea and Charlotte. The match is going to be awesome. How we get there is not. I prefer this to be a singles match between Sheamus and Gunther. And based off of what we saw at Clash at the Castle, and even, what was it, a week or 2 later on SmackDown, where they had the return match and Gunther had to use nefarious tactics to keep his championship. I think it would have been good to pay off this storyline. I know they want to push Gunther to the moon by the end of the year, but losing to a guy like Sheamus at WrestleMania ain't the end of the world. I know Drew McIntyre is here to eat this pin.
Jay, all I'm going to say is if Drew McIntyre walks out of WrestleMania with the Intercontinental Championship, I'm going to rip my television in half.
I actually believe that one. I believe it far more than when you said you were going to throw my out the window.
Oh. Yeah?
Yeah!
But I will say this. Even though I wish it was a one-on-one match between Sheamus and Gunther, if there was 3 dudes that were going to make a triple threat match fun, especially if Gunther is on board with this match, it's going to be the 3 of them. Those 3 are going to...
And Dragunov, just for funsies, I wouldn't be upset.
No, I wouldn't either.
If they already shit the bed as far as the build for this.
Yeah.
So why not just have 4 dudes who are going to beat the living hell out of each other?
Exactly. I agree with that.
But I believe that's about it for me.
That's all. Yep. I think what we have left is the good, the bad, and the brainless.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you got for your good this week, Cousin Jay?
There were plenty of good things, as much as I'd love to go with Cody and Roman's promo, because these 2 guys have really been killing it on the microphone and doing great things. There have been really good in-ring stuff. Kenny against El Vikingo del Fantasma. I know that's not his real name, but on Dynamite. There were plenty of good things. The fact that Seth Rollins sold the hell out of Logan Paul's punch and acted like a leopard print carpet for the next 5 minutes was great. But I'm going in a completely different direction. I'm going with WWE Hall of Famer Sting paying homage to Orange Cassidy. It was one of those things where I just smiled like a little kid. I'm like this, it's ridiculous but incredible at the same time. The fact that an icon like Sting, during his return match, decides that he's going to do the
Yeah.
I freaking loved it. I freaking loved it. It was my favorite thing this week.
The half-ass face paint that he did needs to not be overlooked either from Orange Cassidy, because if he didn't half-ass the face paint, I was going to be pissed. So he has definitely solidified his spot as numero dos behind the Danhausen as Brainless One's favorite wrestler in AEW. But for me, for my good for this week, because I agree, there was a lot of good this week. But you can't beat Andy Kaufman going into the WWE Hall of Fame. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. Leave it to Triple H and WWE to actually find somebody that would make me go, wow, they actually deserve to go in more than Cyndi Lauper, who I've been saying should be in the WWE Hall of Fame for well over a decade. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Andy Kaufman getting into the WWE Hall of Fame is incredible, especially because I have a feeling he's going to show up. What do you got for your bad?
So it was something I got into earlier in the podcast, and it was something I promoted as part of the podcast. Triple H is, in my view, worst booking decision, which is the Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair match. And it's not the match itself, it's the build that they've had to this match. The fact that you have Charlotte Flair, who as a character has been completely unlikable and who has proven in the past that she does not work well as a babyface. And when they tried to turn her babyface and make her the ultimate female babyface, the entire crowd embraced. They embraced Becky Lynch and turned her into the ultimate face. And you knew 100% that was not what WWE believed or planned was going to happen.
Oh,
the fact that they did not learn that lesson, and the fact that they booked this match as is, and like I said, I have zero doubt that they're going to have a banger of a match, but the build up to this and the reasonings for them getting into this are just stupid, and in my view, not worthy of being night one WrestleMania main event. It should be whatever Sammy is doing for the main event of night one, in my view.
Or the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah.
For me, the bad, I'm gonna have to agree. I was gonna go in and say Dynamite, but you know what? Dynamite actually had some redeeming moments. I know they gave us another edition of QTV and you know all that stuff, but you can't make the same mistake twice, WWE. You just can't. And it's bad that you think that Charlotte Flair is a face when you know the fans don't like her. So, and I say it's not even just the fact that I blame Charlotte, because Charlotte, like, at the end of the day, is still a great competitor and a great, you know, she's one of the top 5 performers that they have. But it's an indictment on the fact that WWE has no legitimate faces that they can push on SmackDown. So they had to turn Charlotte Flair a face. Rhea Ripley could have pulled off as the face, but like you said at the beginning of the show, storyline-wise, it doesn't make sense.
You would have to turn the Spooky Pals.
Yes.
And it doesn't make sense at this juncture. Yeah.
What do you got for Brainless?
So I'm going with wrestling fans. And it's because there are a lot of wrestling fans out there now that feel extremely entitled to the performer's time, insisting on autographs, and just not having respect for personal boundaries. And I don't even know if I could legit call these people wrestling fans. I think they're autograph hounds who are trying to make an easy buck off of somebody else's back. And that really sucks. You know, you got people like, whether it's Rhea, whether it's Liv, whether it's Ray, who are, trying to get from point A to point B, and people aren't leaving them alone. And I know it goes beyond the three of them, but the fact that wrestling fans and or people who are autograph seekers or memorabilia seekers are doing what they are doing. And now what they're doing is the 95% of the fans that these people would actually normally have zero problem interacting with, now the 5% are making it so the 95% who are respectful won't get those opportunities anymore. And those people are getting my brainless for this week. And I hope heading into WrestleMania that these poor performers don't have to deal with this quite so much, because that's an awfully thick shell that you have to put on to put up with that crap on a daily basis. And
Agreed.
when it comes to WrestleMania and hundreds of thousands of people coming into a city to see the company, and sometimes in many respects, specifically you. And a lot of this kind of, in my view, goes back to the stuff that happened with Sonya Deville.
Yep.
Like, there's a line, and you try to be as welcoming as possible as a performer, but you don't want to put your safety in jeopardy. And when do you know when that person is absolutely batshit crazy? You don't. So I side with the performers 100% here. Keep yourself safe, and don't let people make money off of the bumps you've taken and what you've done in your life to get to where you are.
And honestly, it's like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I want to say it was before you popped in, with CM Punk when he cut that promo in 2011 when he dropped the pipe bomb. He said, you wrestling fans are the biggest hypocrites of them all, because you're the ones who are going to go out there and buy the merchandise and the programs that my face isn't on. But you'll see me at the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning and shove it in my face so I can autograph it for you. So if that was back then and they were talking about it, and we're still talking about it now in 2023, they need to do something, and it looks like they're going to start doing something. But with that being said, as much as I wanted to give that my brainless for this week, you know me, I love a good old-fashioned poll.
Yeah.
As in like a poll, not like an actual poll, but as in like a voting poll. I'm giving the Elite my brainless. If you knew you were going to do this thing with the ambulance and have it taken out of the thing, you notice that WWE, when they do the ambulance spot, they don't have the ambulance a lot of times outside of the building. It's already in the building, backed up, ready to load the person in, so that they can just drive off and do its little merry thing. If you were going to do that to try to get the sympathy thing, to try to help build this story that you're trying to tell with Hangman Page reuniting with the Elite, and you're going to do this, fine. You're going to do the ambulance spot, fine. I have no problem with it. They've done it before. Millions of people have done it in wrestling. It's going to happen again. We're probably going to witness it at least another 50, 60 times, at least. But if you're going to do it in the building instead of where the truck is that has a picture of the guy who beat the shit out of you, who we haven't seen since he beat the shit out of you and said you couldn't manage a target. Again, this is a giant L for the Elite, and they keep coming out of this looking worse and worse. So they get my brainless for this week.
Yeah.
So if you like what you see, whether you are a continuous fan or somebody who is new, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on YouTube at the letter T, the letter H, the letter E, the letter F, the letter N, MARKS, the F and Marks. If you'd like and follow, subscribe to us, we will do the same back. That has always been our
mantra. And make sure you set up notifications so that when we are live, you will be notified that we are going live on Facebook. And once again, I want to point out on YouTube, we want to build our subscriber list, get it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think in the future, I think that will be a better platform for us. But at this moment, it's not the time for that. But definitely want to encourage people to subscribe to us on YouTube. We do some different things on there that we don't normally do on our page. And again, the hope is in the future to possibly move ourselves over to the YouTube and get ourselves a bigger audience, get more people to join in the conversation, but also make sure you go on Spotify and subscribe to us there. Right now, we've got some subscribers, but we're looking to build the base there and get people to not only subscribe to it, but make sure you like and comment on our different episodes. Anything that will help, build our algorithm there, build our algorithm on YouTube, and just expand the audience. We love talking with you. We love talking about professional wrestling, and we just want to expand as much as we can. And we appreciate all of you for being with us for all these years. I mean, shit, man. 305 episodes. We're talking like going on 7 years.
July.
So, yeah.
And I want to mention really quickly, Facebook did not take any of my pictures down this week, and I was very happy about that. Otherwise, they definitely would have gotten my brainless this week.
Yeah.
But I think that's everything.
Yeah. I think so.
As I gave away the spoiler.
Wait.
Hold on a second. Oh, shit. What's that, Curtis Axel? Well, Brainless One, the fact that you probably secured yourself your own Brainless for next week, I just wanted everybody to know. What is it you wanted everybody to know, Curtis Axel? That today, March 24th of 2023, at an astonishing 2,980 days, I, after Mark's Hall of Famer, Curtis Axel, am still alive in the WWE Royal Rumble. Oh, shit.
Down.
Poor Curtis. So that will be it for episode 305 of everyone's favorite wrestling podcast, The F and Marks.
I am Jay, and he is.
I am the Brainless One. Make sure you mark out
With your guac out. See you, everybody. Enjoy SmackDown, and we will have our WrestleMania predictions next week, and we will figure out when the heck the show will be, whether it's going to be Friday night or Saturday before the show.
Yeah.
We will do our best to let you know on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, on the Twitters.
Yes.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Go Huskies!
Yeah!
Yeah? Later, Cousin Jay.
Yeah!
Yeah?